What's going on, everyone, and welcome to the Trail Theory Podcast. I'm Brian.
I'm Alex.
I'm Austin.
And I'm Pfeiffer.
Welcome back yet again to another wonderful episode of the Trail Theory Podcast.
Mellow.
Oh, ooh, wow.
See, it's not open, though,
hey,
so
that's good.
We're okay.
Yeah, great way to start.
Yep.
Yeah. Opening that treasure chest right away, two episodes in a row. I love it.
It's an important component. So during this episode, looking to kind of take on a topic that will be fun, I believe, and potentially thoughtful and all those good things. But we are going to talk about the mental ups and downs of the trail. I think this was an idea I had at some point, and I think the more I think about it, it feels like a psychology episode. But I'd like to. I'd like to.
I think it's more focused, though. It's not just so broad about it, like the mental game of either maybe the pro or the con of what we experience on the trail. Yeah,
and I think I posed the question around when you're on the trail, what goes through your head? What are some of the things that either, I guess I'm kind of relating it back to our Wyoming trip, where it's like, oh, here's a big challenge. How do you mentally gear up for the challenge? And then how do you kind of come down from the successes of those? But then also, like, when there's those moments of lull.
When we're not quoting
when we're not,
when we're not talking constantly.
Right.
Where's your head at?
I think it happened a lot the last trip. I think it's happened a lot the last few trips, even all the way back to the Whites, where we were maybe a little bit more spread out than we normally would be, or
you couldn't hear each other.
Yeah, you couldn't hear because there was jet engine wind coming through.
The conversation was lighter.
Right? And
plus, when you're working,
raining.
And when you're working harder and maybe more physically exhausted, you're just less likely to talk and chat.
Right.
Plus, if you've been with each other for 48 hours and 3-4 days, it's. I will say, we don't ever run out of things to talk about. I was just going to say that, and this is off topic, but I mean, I am pretty impressed. Not on on all of our trips, if there's a lull, it's not because we run out of stuff to say. It's because we're either doing something, or we're tired, or we
all want a lull,
or we're in awe, or we just want some silence.
Yeah,
and then we talk for hours and thousands of hours, or how many episodes we have?
Thousands of hours. Yeah,
80. This is episode 80.
It's episode 80. So now in 80 recorded hours of talking about the exact same shit, and we never run out of shit to say.
So I'm going to butcher this quote, but they say that like really good friends know how to talk for hours. The best of friends know when to be quiet.
Yeah.
And can control the quiet. I was going to say something like that too.
They're comfortable being
quiet. In the quiet.
Yeah. We can just coexist without talking.
It's like both. Being in the car. Like we did that when we were driving and stuff like that. Not everyone has to be. We're not always like playing the '90s playlist, screaming and stuff, and singing in sync.
There's a lot of that.
There is that.
Make no mistake.
But
quite a bit.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't have to be, and we've done that before.
We did tear through Jackson Hole playing NSYNC pretty loud and singing it very
That was after we had just finished eating.
It was.
I think we were jacked.
Yeah.
Was that before or after the trail?
That was after the trail. The victory meal.
Because
usually it's on the way in.
We didn't listen to any music on the way in.
Yeah,
you're just chatting.
No signal.
Chat or just kind of
interesting
looking at the view.
Usually it's the music.
We were also chatting about like, what do you think that place costs? Maybe like $500,000 or something like that. It's got
2.6 million.
2.6.
Yeah.
8.9 million.
Yeah. That's crazy.
Yeah, Jackson Hole's expensive.
Yeah, a little bit.
But
yeah, go ahead.
I'm excited to talk about this a little bit because I think there's a couple different ways to go about the mental game of it, and there's like a before and after of the mental game.
Sure.
There's and during. There's a before the trip mental game. There's a during the trip mental game, and then there's something that happens, and we've talked about it before, after the trip happens. And just quickly before we get into any of the other stuff, I didn't think I was going to experience my come down that I always get.
Yeah,
and
you're like kind of like post-trip blues.
Yeah, the post-trip blues. this time after the trip, because I literally went from the airport down to the Outer Banks to go do a beach vacation with the rest of my family. But I still had a little bit of the post backpacking trip blues.
So do you think it has to do with backpacking, or do you think it's because of the company that you're with?
You better say the right thing.
I'm totally kidding. Go back.
No, I think it's all of it. I think
Yeah,
all of it
the sense of
has
adventure. I'm sure.
I
overall
think all of it.
experience.
Yeah, we were in one of the most beautiful places I've ever been. But yeah, I love hanging out with you guys. Of course, it's the company that we keep and stuff, and
Totally.
and the goofing around, and and we've talked about this before. When you're on the trail, when you're doing a backpacking trip or you're doing a camp, there's one thing that you're focused on, and it's getting from A to B safely. It's experiencing things that you want to experience on the trail, and you don't have your phone going off with a work call. You don't have someone crying in the background. You don't have traffic that you're going through. You don't get those everyday things. So
you can really live in the moment,
and you can, yeah. And I think coming down from that, that part of the mind game for me, or that mental game, is always going to be a challenge, and it's always going to be a thing. And I know it's going to be, because I really thought, like, going from it's not a vacation. We don't really call it vacations for these backpacking trips, but going from a backpacking trip into a vacation, I still had those blues for a few days.
Yeah. And it's you're basically describing withdrawal, but it's
I guess kind of, right?
Not from a
like a druggy
perspective, but you are essentially on a high for the trip, and it's not like adrenaline pumping the whole time and everything, and like juices flowing the whole time, but you're out of your normal element. You're completely living some different kind of life that you're super excited about.
Awe every day, multiple times a day,
and then so no matter what, eventually you have to come off of that,
right?
And it's going to have some of those similar symptoms.
You're getting some kind of dopamine effect.
Yeah.
Dude, the entire
100%.
trip, you're getting your natural chemical high. Every day.
I think it was like 2 days after the trip. I remember texting you guys and saying, "Man, I really miss you guys." We're not together.
And
anymore.
I will say, and damn it, Austin, I wish you were on this trip. I will say on this last one,
we did the three of us talk. You're not. I don't care if you're a day after surgery or the doctor said no, absolutely not. Yeah. You're coming on the trip. We talked about you and missed you the ton.
We'll put you on a gurney and we'll just carry you.
On our backs.
Believe me, I know.
But oh shit, I lost my fucking thought.
Sorry, I derailed you.
I was saying is sorry to Austin, because I was getting this trip was unique in the sense that we had the trip itself, like actually on trail time,
right?
But because it was so far away and we had to fly, there was a whole. I was joking. By the time we got to the trailhead, we kind of had a trip.
You had a trip,
yeah.
We were experiencing other things.
Right.
You're
too.
totally right.
We went through the airports together. We were on the flights together. We had the drive out there together.
Whether you were backpacking or like getting a cabin or like going to Vegas, that is all the same.
Yeah. Right. So we had that experience, then the trip, and then we had it on the way back. And at the end, it felt like we were out for.
It felt like a long time when we got back.
I
agree. Yeah. I agree. And it's funny. Like talking about the mental kind of scope of things, I usually have a moment, either maybe before the last night, somewhere in there, where I'm kind of like, I'm on the fence, where I'm like excited to go home.
Yeah.
But I'm conflicted because it's like I never want to go home. Obviously never being very extreme,
you're happy where you're just.
I'm kind of content with where I'm at, but obviously I like being at home too. So, and I like all the things that come with that. But on this trip, I didn't really have that. I didn't really feel that. I just felt kind of comfortable, like where I was in that moment in time.
Yeah. That's nice.
It was really, really settling.
Mm-hmm. I get. Near the end of trips, and really it's not even just unique to backpacking. For me, especially when I know that it's coming to an end, my want and need to come home ramps up hard.
Really?
Yeah, dude. Like it's if it was like open-ended, it would maybe not be that way, but if I know, okay, this is the day, it's like, all right, my only goal, my only focus, is to get home and be home.
Yeah.
And have that. It's interesting. I because I don't really get the post trip blues. I get it maybe later on when there's a lull. When it's like we don't have anything. Yeah, we don't have anything planned. You know, it's that kind of thing where it's like, all right, we got to get something on the books. We got to figure this out. Even if like again, like this trip, I wasn't able to go. Like you guys were going, it was booked, everything like that. I felt okay. I wasn't like I was bummed to miss it, obviously, and like I wish I could have gone, but like I literally didn't have. It was what was supposed to happen. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Right. And you made the decision like with a clear mind. Like, you didn't ever, it wasn't like something that was out of your control. Like it hit me and then I was like, it was out of your control and you made the decision.
It hit me and then I almost didn't tell you guys. And I was like, I'm telling you today. I was going to just wait. But I was like, no, I gotta just rip it.
So it's almost a lack of anticipation is what brings you down as opposed to like coming off, because like we can come off a trip and have the next one planned already, and it's like immediately it's like, all right, cool, like I know where we're headed next, and that lessens it a little bit. Like I still feel that a little, like Brian's describing, but if we walk off the trail, it's like, sweet, 2 months, see you guys again, like we know where we're headed. That makes a huge difference. So between trip 1 and 2, when we already have that figured out,
it's exciting.
It's way different than end of year, where
especially
it's like, see you in the spring,
especially like a big one.
That's a big,
especially a big one. Yeah, when you end a big one.
I agree. For me, coming off of any sort of outdoorsy trip, I'm always looking forward to the next one.
Yeah,
and like I have a couple things stacked up already, which is good. But
next month we're going to be all of us with the family going out and doing a family camp thing. That's going to be awesome. I can't wait for that.
Epic.
That's going to be great.
It's going to be amazing.
So fun.
It's going to be amazing.
But those kinds of things, the ramp up of the anticipation of a trip for me, and I've talked about this probably at length to this point, but that's a huge piece for me.
Yeah.
Just knowing that something's coming, and then something, just you have the date circled. It's like that, then it gets closer and closer and closer, and then all of a sudden it's bang. We're going to Wyoming in a week. Shit. Like, it was awesome. Those kinds of moments, I think, are huge.
I think when you mentioned this topic idea, my mind immediately went to during.
Well, it's interesting that we're kind of working backwards.
Yeah.
I actually love that we're doing that, because there's a lot that I want to say for the pre-trip, but there's also a ton that we can talk about for the during too.
I think you're at you guys just came off a trip, so that's probably why it's top of mind.
Maybe a little bit.
It's the freshest first, I guess. We're going backwards. But
that's what's closest to you right now is that post-trip.
But the during, like our trip to Wyoming comes up, but Whites, Adirondacks, Linville come to mind immediately when it's like mental game. Those are the trips, especially Linville for me.
Yeah, I mean, I would say the most mentally difficult ones are, I would say, obviously, Brian, you've had some mental difficulty just given, with your brother, and those are challenges. And I think, then you add the physical component to it, right? The physically challenging trails, there's an added mental layer to it.
Yeah.
Whereas, not to say that an easier trail is void of the mental discussion or discovery, but those moments exist, just in a different, maybe less heightened capacity. So
I always notice it. Well, how do we want to tackle the during?
I can start part of the during if you want.
I would say so let's frame up some scenarios, right?
Yeah.
Like, how do you kind of, we get to the trailhead and, we're kind of doing our last second gear checks. Like, what's your where's everyone's head at there? And I'll kind of start. I'm happy to start. I kind of liken it to, I kind of remind myself of playing high school football when you're getting ready for the game. There's a lot of heightened excitement. You're kind of emotional.
Prep rally's done.
Yeah. But it's also the anticipation and the excitement of getting to that moment is its own thing.
Yeah.
But then the moment is about to happen. Yeah. And it's like, oh shit. It's it's time to perform. It's time to, put the fucking boots on the trail and
perform.
How many miles are we doing today? We're doing 8. All right, I got to start thinking about getting myself to that 8. And I think typically first day that we're pretty reasonable on miles. So it's a little easier to put that mental piece aside.
Sometimes we weren't just now or the last trip.
No, day one was an ass kicker.
It was an ass kicker.
It was the hardest day, I think, for
I
me.
am stressed.
Not the hardest day, but it was very difficult physically for me.
Yeah. What's everyone's head like at the start of a trip?
I'll go. So for me, I'm not constantly, but there's that moment, like especially when we're like seeing the signs. All right, we're like
getting
where
close
I
to
start redoing my inventory of my pack in my head.
Do I have
and I'm like,
everything?
I was like, just make because we always usually have like another bag or like other stuff with us. And I'm like
in
with
the
like
car.
a water, snacks, like stuff like that, and like a change of clothes. I'm just making sure I got is everything like here that I need that? Okay, this is in the bag. I definitely needed to bring this. Like I am going through that, so it's less of like. Going, oh yeah, I'm excited. Let's go. It's more like, okay, let me just make sure everything is like, to kind of get it together. Everything good there. Okay, all right. Now we're parked. I'm putting my boots on. Is that tied nice? Okay, good to go. And then like if it's if Mike is with us, your brother's with us, he always does like a prayer beforehand. And
okay. I thought you were going somewhere else with Mike. Sorry.
Is kind of like he's you mean unprepared?
Yeah, like packing.
I'm worried about him.
Yeah.
No,
I'm worried about all the shit he's bringing up.
No, but that to me is like when we do that and we circle around, we're like, all right, it's that to me is like
ready, break. Yeah,
here we go. Yeah, that to me is like the moment of like or like we'll crack a beer.
Yeah, crack a beer
at the van before, and that to me is like, all right.
See, I'm like, I'm the opposite because like I'm so hyper focused on the checklist and going through the pack list and multiple. I go through it multiple times, and like right before we even get in the car.
Yeah,
and before we do any of the stuff, like I know the gear I have is good.
Once the bag is in the car,
I know that
I don't think about it.
You were talking about like, I'm so like as we're approaching, I'm the fucking dog that's seen the mailman in the background going, I want to go, let me like I'm ready to go, like ready to rip in. I even sometimes the beer that we have at the car, like right beforehand, it's like, all right, I don't even want to do that. I just want to get on the fucking trail. Let's go. Like, shotgun these so we can go now.
Yeah. See, I think I'm the kind of person that, like, as much as I love the activity, I love the tradition
for sure
that surrounds it, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's
right.
like, okay, I'll give you this is another example. It's not a backpacking example, but it's very relevant for me right this second, just because I just came back from this weekend. I do a fantasy football draft with old friends, and we always get a cabin. And it's a blast. It's a great time. I love fantasy football's fine. Like I enjoy it, but it's way more than about that.
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
You guys go intense.
We have these traditions that we do. We have been friends for a long time. There's been jokes that have just never died. It's just like that to me is more important than the draft and the cabin's fine, but it's
the fanfare around it.
The fanfare, and I get sucked into the fanfare when it comes to backpacking too. Yeah. Like, when my boot hits the trail, I'm there.
Go time,
right?
You're there.
But it's I love everything. I like the fanfare surrounding it.
Yeah,
it's fun.
Yeah, it certainly makes it fun, and there's a certain level of routine that becomes calming. It's like, okay, we're going to do this, then we're going to do that. There's like an order of operations for it to all make sense. And once all those boxes are checked, it's like, all right, let's do this.
Go time.
And it's interesting because I think I'm the odd man out there. I don't think, well, you mentioned this, Alex. I don't think about what's in my pack at all.
Same.
But when I'm taking it from my car and putting it in my back and like that's already solved. I've either succeeded or failed.
I will
at that
say
point.
though,
like it's. I agree.
I
have no control
agree.
over it at that point.
I agree with you, but I will say in this Wyoming trip changed this for me. Excuse me. Packing at the trailhead, sucks.
Yeah, that was terrible. Yeah,
it does.
But you could have. Did you not use your pods in the thing?
Everything was packed inside, but it still
was
a
little scrambly.
There were a couple. I did not like that.
You were a little scrambly.
There were a couple of things like it wasn't like I took my packed bag, chucked it in my suitcase, opened my suitcase up when we got there, and I was ready to go.
See, I
had things parsed out.
I had everything in my pods, so it was literally like if I was at the campsite, just putting my stuff back in my bag. So it was like, cool, this is going in, that's in,
and
done.
And just to
Zip
explain,
up, go.
In case, because I don't think we've talked about it, but just to explain why we had to do that. So since we flew there, we packed suitcases and just put all the stuff that goes in our pack in the suitcase instead. So mine was an empty pack, and on top of it, inside the suitcase, all of my stuff kind of organized, and I left like my bear canister open in case somebody from TSA wanted to look at it. I didn't want them throwing the whole thing away. So I was, and then
pissed if they threw it away.
Right. But then at Trailhead, we kind of had to engineer and put our stuff together when normally we just show up and it's packed and we go.
And just go. Yeah.
So I wasn't a huge fan, but again, all that had already been figured out.
Again, it was all in the suitcase.
I just got to stuff it in.
And I knew it was all there. Yeah. So I was good with that, but I just I like showing up with it already in.
Yeah. So I think like for me, we talk about the drive up and it's like I'm just like my head's on a freaking swivel and drive up and I'm looking up and out at all this stuff because I'm like, oh, we're going to be in that. Like that. And my head just immediately goes to, I can't wait to be like Google man over there. Like just chuck them.
Yeah. And you really don't do the amount of research like maybe Alex or I do, where it's like maybe you've watched a video and you can kind of see like, okay, this is what the trail's kind of like. You don't do that either, Austin.
No, not really.
So like you guys are like, I wonder what's going to be.
Yeah.
And it's all like when we were hiking up to Texas Pass, there was a million different. I didn't know exactly when we were going to hit it.
Yeah,
and I was like, oh, is that it? Like, oh no, okay, that would have been cool.
I'm always
just like scanning cool shit.
No amount of preparation, at least for the Wyoming trip. I saw a lot of visuals of things, right? But it still all felt unknown to me.
Yeah, and it was remote as all.
Yeah,
and it's like even you see pictures of it, and it's like, yeah, I know. When I see that, I'm gonna know it's there, and it's like still kind of. It was very fuzzy on that trip, but yeah.
But I mean, I apply that to every trip we've been on. You look at like Linville or Perry or any of them, and it's just my brain is just like a blank. I'm just absorbing everything around me. I'm not thinking about anything particular.
I've seen it. Whenever it comes to a trip that we pick, like I've seen enough photos to know that it's going to be dope.
Yeah,
yeah,
and that's about it, right?
Yeah.
The photos that are just on All Trail for the people who talk.
I'm just like,
put on the trail.
God, this is what I want, and then that's about it.
Right.
Yeah. So I want to frame up an idea, and let's talk about this because I think that there's one instance that I think will bring really good dialogue about where kind of your mental headspace is. I want to use Linville as an example, and we probably talked about this a little bit during the episode, but I think we can dig a little deeper. So when we did Linville Gorge, the loop. Just to frame it up, we talk about we were going to cross the river. We knew we needed to cross this river. I think a couple days before the trip, we recognized there was a potential challenge ahead. So with the, I forget if it was CFCs or what, I don't remember what the water speed was.
The measurement, water.
But at any rate,
per second.
Doesn't, I think CFS maybe. But at any rate, so we knew kind of at the start of the trailhead that it might be impassable. And that was going to be day 2.
Okay, yeah.
So I want to understand and kind of where everyone's head was with that. I think we kind of knew going out that it's probably impassable. But like as time went on, what, in your own brain, what were you kind of thinking? What were some of your thoughts like getting up to this, like this potential challenge and obstacle that we didn't know if it was possible?
So I know exactly where I was. So I treat everything out there this way, whether we know we're coming up on something challenging or whether we just don't freaking know it all. But for that situation, it was like, I'm going into it expecting that I don't know shit. Like, so if the plan was we're going to cross it, then I'm walking into it thinking we're going to try and do that.
Right. That's the plan.
But if that doesn't happen or if it can't, then we'll do something else. And we don't know what, and like I've learned to come to accept that I'm just not even going to try and plan it.
To go with the flow.
Like, why would I? I have, in that moment in time, no decision I make matters for shit. Like it absolutely has no impact on what I'm doing or what anybody else is doing. So like, we're just going to walk and then that's it. And then we'll get there and we'll make a decision and then that will be the decision we make and we'll go walk some more and we'll do that instead. And like at any point on any trail, I'm just learned to not expect anything because then when you get to it, it's just you're just soaking in all the variables in even more. It's just like I'm just in this. I have no control. I don't want to have control. That's why I'm here. And then just let it happen. And then inevitably it's going to turn into something awesome. So like, why try? just let shit happen.
Why try?
I think in the anticipation of it, I think I was probably hopeful. I was at the before approaching it, I wasn't trying to gameplay scenarios out, but like, I don't know, I just positive and like, yeah, I think maybe it's doable, but like you don't know, like that and particularly was maybe a little bit more difficult just because like you have a little bit of the data. So you know a little bit to be dangerous, right?
But you don't have all the information.
But what does it look like? How far do you really have to go? How deep is the water? How cold is the water? Like, so it was like, okay, I'm going to stay positive about it, like in hopes that we can get through,
achieve our goal.
Yeah, and then after the fact, seeing it and going through the motions and really trying to figure out like, now if we do this and we go over here and I get in the water up there and it drives me down this way and goes that, like really trying to gameplay that part of it out. And then after, making a smart decision and not do it.
Yeah.
But I think I was trying to stay positive through the whole thing up to the point of, it's just
and the whole exercise of trying to game plan it out was fun in and of itself.
Yeah.
Well, it was just like,
I famously
solve this puzzle?
Was like, no, dude, we're not doing this. As soon as we got there, but the whole entire time I was like amped to see it. Be like, what are we gonna see? What is this gonna look like?
Right.
I have no we like I said, we did a little research, but in my head I could not fathom what it really was actually going to be. Like, is it really that big of a deal?
Right.
And it was immediately.
Well, that was kind of my. I was like, is it really going to be that fast?
Yeah. It was like, we can do this.
It was that fast.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it was.
And then immediately I was like, oh yeah, I got to remember nature is undefeated.
Yes.
Yeah.
And,
number one.
That's a good reminder.
That's definitely a good reminder.
What was your thought?
I remember reading those articles or wherever I found them about the water flow, and I remember feeling anxious about it, and not anxious in like a bad way, just like anxious to want to get there
and see
and have all the information.
Yeah.
Like I remember, we had like everyone had different opinion. Like I remember Austin, you were very much like, I don't think we're gonna be able to do it. And then I remember like Pfeiffer having a conversation with you. It's like, I think you and I were very much in the same like mindset of like, we can't make a decision until we at least see it.
Let's get there. Yeah.
And I was like, I just remember like all these kind of thoughts kind of happening at one time. Wanting to obviously wanting to do it, right?
Yeah.
First and foremost. But then also like, okay, let's identify everything. I'm like, I was going through the like the play by play in my mind. Well, if we can do it, great. If we can't, what do we do? And I've never ever been out there, and I don't think we've done any trails that have, maybe I'm wrong, correct me if I'm wrong, that have been there have been some variables that like just completely throw an entire wrench in the operation. We've always kind of had an out of some way where it's not like we did I don't even know what a scenario would be, but we've never been totally wrecked.
Right.
We've always been able to recover, I guess.
Well, we are sitting here.
Right.
and we recovered even from, Linville. Like we just turned around and like we made it work. But
it worked out.
But yeah, incredibly, I mean, really, right?
I think
we got lucky how well it worked.
Like, it's so interesting to me that what you just described and the anxiety of like knowing how we're going to handle this next challenge and all that stuff is one of the things I get most out of backpacking is getting away from that. So like in normal life, I'm planning everything. I know exactly what's going to happen tomorrow at work. I know exactly what's going to happen 3 months from now at work, or in the family life. It's like it's all planning. It's all, I need to be anxious about this thing because that's coming and I got to be ready for it. And if I'm not, this is going to happen. And all that is just all the time. So I'm intentionally, like, that's why I love backpacking, is it gives me a chance to, I always joke about the Google Man thing.
Yeah, like unravel.
Right. It's just like, plop me out there. And I don't
just
care
put me
what
in the
happens.
scenario.
Yeah, you could, we could have been walking past Table Rock at Linville and it just fell over and blocked the trail. It's like, oh, okay, we'll do something else now. That's just how it happens.
We've been very good at being able to adapt. Not everybody's like that, though.
Agreed.
And so if you put someone in a scenario where they are scared of change, and if something goes unplanned, they start freaking out. That could be devastating for a person.
No, I understand.
And it could also wreck a trip.
Yeah, it could, absolutely. So I think, there's variables for sure. We happen to be very good at being able to kind of just, well, that's not going to work, so let's go ahead and just do this instead.
And we balance each other out as a group, too, which I think contributes to making it easier.
And I lean on, because if I was doing that solo, I'd have to do a little bit more and be a little bit more, not anxious, but be a little bit more forward thinking on something. So I lean on,
we lean on each other for a lot of
weird,
things.
If we got to let's take that whole scenario just like we had it, right? We're in the group, we're in Linville, we're looking at the thing, and we're trying to game plan. I would still do what we did 45 to an hour trying to figure out how to do it. If I was solo, I would have got there, be like, nope, bye, and then turn back around. But because you guys are there, I've got you guys to crutch on.
You gotta bounce things off
and I feel a little bit more safe. I feel like we'd a little bit more in control, like group by is it group by numbers? No.
I would have I absolutely wouldn't have done it. But I would have the ideas we were entertaining about throwing lines across and doing all this shit.
So
that would never even have popped in my. But I would have gone up and down a bit and explored and be like, is there a way I could just
another way where I can hop across rocks?
Because I'm and I was amazed that wasn't possible. Because I'm like, you got to be able to go up a bit and just walk over.
There was nothing.
Yeah. Absolutely nothing.
Definitely not downstream.
Right.
No.
Downstream was nothing.
It just opened up and it was just well,
there it is.
Screw you. I would have explored a bit, but
the conclusion would have come to the same, come to the same conclusion.
Yeah.
So we're still on the trail, and I've been wanting to ask this a little bit, individually in your mind, when things get difficult, things get hard, while it could be not having a great camp spot, it could be a physically challenging thing like going up Texas Pass, or being in the rain the entire time during the whites and having to go up these crazy huge boulder sections that are all slippery and stuff. And those sections where we are kind of quiet and in our headspace. I'm curious, because we've never really talked about this. What is going through your mind during those times where it is difficult physically, it is exhausting mentally to still have to watch every step and that kind of thing? And I can start us off, just so you have a reference of what I'm kind of talking about. When we were going up Texas Pass and I was having a hard time, I'm sensitive to altitude, 100% know that now.
2 trips in a row.
Two trips in a row. I know I'm sensitive to altitude. I'm going to have to figure that one out. But and I kind of think I was also coming down with something too, because I started having a little bit of a cough afterwards. But
I thought you were going to say during diarrhea.
No, not that kind.
I'm kidding.
But you guys are not miles in front of me or anything like that. But during that whole uphill of me being by myself, and you guys, I see you up at the top, and I see you guys take a break, and I'm kind of taking breaks and kind of lazily going up, and in my head the whole time, I'm going, am I ruining this trip for them because my pace is so slow? Am I hurting their experience because they can't go at the pace that they want to go at, or I'm having to stop?
You should have said, am I doing this? Because we could have squashed that.
No, I know. But I'm going through this mental battle of myself of am I burdening them and their experience for having to stop maybe 1 or 2 more times more than they would have initially? Or, again, slowing the pace down to enough where it was and this is hard for me to go this slow. I need to speed up for me to be more comfortable in my body and being able to get to the top. Those are things that were going through my head. And I know the answer is no, who cares? It doesn't matter. Maybe
I'll add to the answer,
but
I'll add to the answer because not only that, but you unintentionally enhanced it, because especially out there, but on any trip. And also, you always rag on us because, especially me,
slow
that
I just smell the roses.
Right, I just go too fast all the time.
We smelled all the roses.
We did,
but it's we never stopped specifically because it's Brian. No,
or
it was like
did you guys have to worry? Like, is he gonna fucking make it up?
No. There was no worrying, but there was stopping of like, oh, good break point.
Yeah,
let's regroup. And then it was like, oh wait, look where we are.
Yeah,
it's like and we got more opportunities.
I'm gonna comment on this because I've been the caboose with a bum ankle where I felt.
Where you had that,
like I was slowing the group down, but I actually didn't really have that thought like, oh, they're waiting for me, they're doing this, doing that. I didn't have that thought because maybe if it was different people, but I know that I would do the exact same thing that you guys did for me. It's just, it is what it is. Yeah. There's nothing wrong with it.
We're getting through it together.
And you know what?
Through it together.
I don't know why I never even thought about. I could have just thought about the opposite way, like where we were maybe taking a little bit slower time. I never really gave a shit either. Like this is perfect,
and that's how we feel.
Yeah. So I guess there's the answer, but
I understand it.
Those are things that I think I'd have that regardless of knowing the answer or not. Like I think those thoughts just kind of run through your head because I wouldn't have those thoughts if I was doing it solo because it's like I don't have to worry about anybody else's experience other than my own.
Right.
Like I don't have to make sure that like, are they having a good time? Are they upset that I'm going too slow? Are they upset that we're like that I can't figure this out? Like what you're just in your headspace that whole time while you're also battling like am I that out of shape or am I really being that affected by this altitude? Or it doesn't have to be about the last trip or anything. It's just top of mind because it was just a couple weeks ago, but you just kind of go through those motions. And I went through those motions when I was on Rainier too. It's like when I was, severely dehydrated going up the last, 1,000 feet and like taking one step at a time. It's like, am I really that much slower than everybody else? It's never a competition with us while we're on the trail ever.
Right.
And I've never felt, but like, you have.
I mean, I won twice, but we're not keeping score.
But you have that kind of mindset.
You're battling your own mind at that point.
Yeah. It's a race against yourself.
And I don't think that's something. I don't know. I don't know if I'll ever get over that part of it. But that's just stuff that kind of goes through my head when I, as hardship comes through and as adversity comes through, it's weird what your mind does when you're trying to tackle that kind of thing.
To see like.
I'm totally different. Yeah, I don't know if I want to go next or not, but
when thinking about this topic, I kind of had this thought of like, how I feel when I'm physically challenged on the trail, and I've kind of had this. Maybe I didn't feel this way in the moment, but I know how I feel now, especially after like I remember the whites being difficult just because of like the weather we were in. And we were soaked. It was difficult. There were a lot of moments on our own, and I smiled a lot through it. Yeah, because I was excited to have the challenge. Something changed in me where I was like, "This is incredible," because I also know the story that's on the other side of this.
Sure.
And what's going to be told. Yeah. I really have flipped my mindset to mind over matter. Yeah. When it came to that, as long as I'm not being injured.
Yeah. Right.
I'm enjoying myself. I'm not getting hurt. It might be painful and difficult, but I know the story on the other side of this is great and so fun, and I can't wait to retell it. Yeah. And also, have those memories for myself. So, and I think that's just come with maturity and age and experience and also like doing more physically active things with my running that's changed in
you know what right. That's interesting you said that because I was in fairly good shape for the whites and I was with you on that where I was smiling, I was screaming, I was like in the front in the pack and like I remember turning around and like barely being able to see you guys.
There was one where I was like, Brian, you gotta slow down
shouting, screaming like a banshee. And
not because he was far away, because he was like 30 feet away.
Yeah, but because your visibility was terrible.
Bananas.
But I do remember kind of having that same experience with that trip too.
Yeah.
I think at least for me, it's variable on like how am I doing physically?
Yeah.
Like am I able to keep up or am I able to I guess keep up with my own expectations?
Yeah, but I also like with what happened with you out there, you just had altitude sickness. You're sensitive to it. Yeah. So it's just, but now you know that.
I'm going to take that drug. I can't remember what the drug's called. That helps out with that.
Is it there's like it's like a Dramamine type thing or
Kinda,
not that, but like
yeah.
you know,
There's something you can take that'll help with
Altitudes.
that. like a cereal that you eat.
Yeah.
Altitudes.
Altitude.
It makes you pee a lot. I'll be
Altitudinol.
peeing as much as you are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I peed a lot on that trip. I drank a shit ton of water on that trip too.
Yeah.
We did. It was we were chugging through. I mean, it
Well
was nice 'cause
hydrated. And we had tons of water.
I was gonna say we
Tons of
saw
water.
water every 5 feet.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was very easy.
But no, that I think that's I'm trying to lock in on something for this, and every trip I can think of where I reached that point where I had to like, mental my way through it. So there's Linville, Adirondacks, Whites, and Wyoming. I feel like I'm missing one, but at least those 4. And it's different every time.
80K.
80K.
Yeah, it's different.
And it's different every single time.
Yeah.
So like I know for Linville, which was I think to this day probably my most challenging because it just took me to my limit. And there was a point where I was like saying Hail Marys to myself. Like I'm like, I just have to distract myself from everything else. So I'm going to focus on one monotonous
So you're kind of like going
task.
into your pain cave and you're just
Right.
like doing the one
Banging
thing
it
and
out.
each time.
I get that.
One step in front of the
and
other.
and I'm like, until this is done, I'm just going to do this one thing in my head and I'll let my
Yeah.
body take care of the
Yeah.
rest. And that worked for that.
yeah.
I get that for sure. Yeah, because I think with the Whites too, like for me, it was like there were certain points where it was like you really had to focus on your feet.
Yeah.
Just focus on your feet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just focus
Yeah,
on your
and
feet.
if that's the only thing you can
Task
focus
at
on,
hand.
Yep.
good.
Do it.
Good.
Yeah.
Live in the moment and just move with it.
And Whites was that. Plus, like, there'll be times where I'll just do inner monologue for hours. And it's like I'm just talking to myself. Or it's, it's like writing a book almost. But if there's like an idea that I have that I just want to flesh out, and I'm just I'm just talking to myself in my head about,
Yeah,
and I'm
yeah.
like, and sometimes I'm persuading myself on something. If I was making this case to myself, go. And I'm just talking to myself.
You know what I do sometimes? Like my inner monologue, it's if I were to be in a situation where somebody made a comment or had a question, how would I respond? And I have to think about how would I
Yeah.
respond?
Yeah.
What is my conviction?
100%.
And how would I relay that
Yeah.
information?
I do that.
Isn't
Dude,
that weird?
I do that all the time.
Yeah, all the time, dude.
and it's and that helps a ton. And then in
Well,
Wyoming,
it gives you something very specific
Exactly.
to concentrate on.
and I know with height, like sometimes, and it doesn't work when it's super technical and you really have to watch what you're doing.
Sure.
But at
you
that-
do.
at-
I mean, you have to pay attention.
Right. But at those moments, it's not necessarily like grinding hard. Your body's worn out. It's like, you just got to be and then you're excited to think about that challenge. But it's the monotonous just grinding through the trail part when your body's fatigued that this other stuff works. And but then for Texas Pass in Wyoming, it was just a step. Like I'm just
In it.
looking at my feet. Like I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, here's the next one. Here's the next, and all I'm thinking about is where the next foot's gonna go.
See, that's what
It's
I was
different
doing
every single
while
time.
I was
Yeah.
actively hiking. It was that one foot in front of the other,
Yeah.
one foot in front of the other, one step. We're getting there, and then I would stop and I'd look around and be like, "Wow, this is beautiful." And I look up at you guys and be like, "They're waiting for me." What? Why am I?
And we were thinking then,
what
we were
is
like,
wrong
man,
with
Brian
me?"
is really ruining this trip. Damn, dude. No, so it's funny.
man.
Pfeiffer, you kind of alluded to it about like the anxiety and like having that at home and being on the trail, not thinking about that. I feel like so rarely do I feel that way. Like in general in life, like
Yeah.
at home with my business, whatever. Like I very rarely feel that way. And maybe it's just my tolerance for it. So it was interesting that Linville moment kind of happened, and it was kind of unique in that. I sometimes think we talk about inner monologue, inner conversation. First off, the things that are going on in this brain. I think you said it, Austin. You were like, "Oh man, you really know your friends when you know when to be silent."
Yeah.
I don't know when to be silent. In this brain, I don't know myself all that well because we're just like chugging, man. It's like a train going on there. But interestingly enough, so I'm almost always, I'm just generally a positive person, right? Very optimistic, always kind of the glass is always half full. It's never half empty. But that said, I sometimes when the going does get tough, and it does. The thing that I try and do, and sometimes it's that moment of just kind of like you guys are saying, you got to do this. You need to just get over the rocks and just focus on the rocks.
Yeah.
What I like to do sometimes, and it just kind of occurs, is I'll just think of something that's harder.
Yeah.
And like, there'll be like, I'll know that there's like, when I get home, there's a tricky problem that I need to solve. And like immediately the thing in front of me becomes very easy because it's just a matter of like, well, the thing I'm thinking about is a lot more challenging than me just like trekking over these rocks.
Right.
I can do this shit.
Interesting
And I always
move.
With the positive attitude in my mind, it's like, I know we're going to solve it.
Yeah.
And it's not like Linville's a good example. The Whites are a good example. Like, we're getting pounded with rain and it's like, it was kind of miserable, kind of sucky at times. But it was like, first off, man, this is going to be a great story. We're going to get through this. Or we're going to find a way.
Right.
So it's like, it's just kind of like you just grind through it. But yeah,
I think
it's a tricky balance.
And I think so much of it is like situation dependent. I mean, there's times where I've just done math to get myself through. Like I'll just
that's a step too far.
I can't do math.
I'm saying it seems insane. But there's like I'll try to like estimate how many rocks there are in this area or something.
That's
and
not.
It's like
I thought you were
trying
like,
to do
what's 382
different multiplications.
No, I'll just like what
you're
what's
trying to be Rain Man out there.
What problem can I give myself to just do? And it's like find something harder. It's like okay, we'll solve this. Okay, and then you just start working on that. And that's the beautiful thing about backpacking, at least the sections that aren't super technical. Your body will just go on autopilot. Just let it go.
Certain things are going to find a way.
Yeah, you're telling it to go in that direction. You don't really have to think about it too much. It's just going to go, and then you can put your brain somewhere else.
It's funny you say that, and it makes me think about there's varying degrees of like in our group. Like if all 9 of the people that have gone backpacking with us went on a trip, and let's pretend we were getting to the end of the day. It's a busy trail. And we don't have a camp spot. The varying,
I was going to ask about that
degrees
too.
I will say that I do get a little
for people
anxious about that.
Are like, and again, it's not. It's
I like dope campsites.
Yeah,
I just saw everybody flash in front of my mind, and I'm like, I know exactly what everybody's doing.
You know how everyone's going to react.
Yeah,
and I think about myself in that situation, and this is just maybe this is the wrong way to think about it. We're not going to not sleep. Right. Like, we're going to find something.
Yeah.
Now, something...
But I want a boogie. I want to be at the cool site.
And I want that, too.
I want a flat ground to be on.
Right.
But I'm also
Next
just
to
a
water.
believer that
Next
it's like...
water.
We're going to find something.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just... Yeah. And that part... I could give 2 shits or like my level of stress. Now, I will say when like this... There have been... 2 instances, I believe, Loyal Sock being one of them, where it was like, okay, it's getting dark.
Right.
It's
just
time. It's time to find a spot.
Right.
And that I remember feeling a little bit of anxiety. That was our second trip.
Yeah.
But beyond that, like a sweet spot is always key, and that's
this
makes a better trip.
This is what I think. I think we only do this so often.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
So let's find a dope spot.
So we should be as thoughtful about that piece of the process.
My anxiety comes in with the camp spot in particular, and I was going to ask this same question because I was curious. When we get to the proposed area where it's like, okay, this is where we're supposed to camp, and either it's not here, which we've had happen before,
or a tree fell on it.
At Black Forest, where the tree is just there in the middle of it. We're like, well, we can't do this one. It's happened multiple times, actually, now I'm thinking about it.
That was the most drastic, though, because you could literally see the old fire ring and just tree.
You know what, though? But we had already seen camp spots that were open,
true. But,
so there was already some confidence.
Bad example on that, but you know, we're getting through to the point where it's like, well, this is, or this, the spot we really wanted is taken already.
Yeah.
And it's
always a bummer.
It's 3:00. How did they get here so fast?
They've been here for 3 days.
Yeah, it's like, damn, man. Like, this is where we were supposed to go.
Yeah.
Like, this is what we were supposed to have. And, you know, I start to get a little bit of anxiety during that part of it. But again, we are very good as a group at adapting and finding the next spot.
Yeah.
So
and just hunkering down.
But there's a part in your mind where it's like, oh shit, no.
This isn't according to plan.
Yeah, it's not according to plan.
So I want to ask you a question, Brian, and I'm sure I'm just curious your perspective. So our last trip, day 2 was supposed to be short.
Yeah.
and we got it was like 3 miles.
It's
that
gonna
day.
be 3 or 4. Yeah,
And
3 or 4.
we got to that point, and I think we all generally recognized that the next day would be incredibly long. If
It was going to be
If we stayed
11 or 12 miles
11 miles.
ish. Yeah. If we just stayed there according to our proposed plan. I remember my perspective was you were feeling anxious about continuing on.
I was.
And I remember so
You wanted to continue, or you didn't?
no.
He was having a rough middle of the day.
So-
At that point, we had just done Texas Pass.
Yeah.
We had just came down. I wanted to camp in the Cirque right there. I
Yeah.
wanted to camp on Lonesome Lake right there because of a few factors. Number one, it was the plan.
That was the plan.
Rose,
Yeah, it was. And it was.
Number two, I was thinking about like podcast.
Yeah.
I wanted to have that backdrop because I know what it is. I'm here.
Right,
I can
you can
see
see
that
it.
it is
Yeah.
one of the most f***ing glorious things I've ever seen, and I wanted everyone else to be able to kind of see that with us, and that was going to be a dope backdrop.
Yeah.
The fish were biting, so we were going to have fish. Okay.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
I was feeling tired. We were eating lunch right on the lake there, and I wasn't feeling very good. Like my stomach was kind of upset a little bit. I think it was the first day lunch that we had. I was like, I'm not happy with any of the lunches that I packed, and they're all the exact same. And so I'm like having to muster through this. So I was going through some shit during that time. All of you guys were like, we're going to we're Big Sandy Lake. That we there's no possible way. Not one of you guys wanted to stay.
There was no crack in the armor.
Not one of you guys wanted to stay.
I was the longest holdout, but I had given up,
So
miles ahead
the
before.
question I want to ask though is like,
Yeah.
so how'd you get over that? Right? I mean, listen, unless somebody's blind, everybody saw it.
I
don't
saw
get me
it
wrong,
too.
I was frustrated with the situation because I too wanted to stay there.
Yeah.
I love the plan, and I think we are generally as a group really good at when the plan needs to change, we all pretty much embrace it.
Yeah.
And that was a little
Was
difficult.
I that transparent? I didn't think I was being that transparent. Was it that
You were-
transparent?
It was. I mean,
I think,
Yeah.
but I also I also think Brian, and again, it's not a bad thing.
It's not.
I think
yeah.
I think you had some frustration with like the altitude and the circumstance.
when I saw you and you were just quiet, and it was just out of character. I didn't, it was just quiet, and I knew the stuff you said. There's more to it than what I thought it was, but I was like, he's bummed that this is so hard.
It wasn't that
we're
it was
not
so
going to be
hard.
able to like stay here.
Well,
It was
and
that
I'm
we weren't going to
like-
be able to stay there.
Yeah, but I mean, like, I thought, I'm like, I know this is challenging for him because he is having a hard time and he doesn't want to have a hard time, and because you're dealing with the altitude and all that stuff. And I'm like,
At that point-
that's bumming him out.
At that point, the physicality of it wasn't that bad. It was the fact that I wasn't feeling, my stomach wasn't feeling good.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to have to, Jackass Pass was our next
Right.
thing that we had to do, which isn't as hard as
But it was
Texas
hard.
Pass.
It was still
It was
tough.
still tough.
Yeah, it was tough.
And I knew that, like, okay, so now I have to go up this fucking hill with my stomach upset. And I'm also not going to have this as a backdrop for the podcast. I'm not going to have an awesome camp spot because by the time we got there, it was still very early on.
And listen,
and we could have got a
would
great,
have had
great spot.
We would have had, because I went and used a camp spot for another activity.
Yeah.
We would have had a fantastic
Right.
camp.
So I think there were a lot of layers
Used
a
it
part
for
of that.
How much farther did you go after
Dude,
you decided
6
to move on?
6 miles.
Is it 6?
5 or 6
Oh,
miles.
it was a
You
whole
were
Five
lot.
only
miles.
supposed to do like 3 or 4,
But-
and you ended up doing 6 more.
So
Yeah.
here was the rub,
Wow.
okay, and this is where the challenge came. We had called it 11 miles at that point. We were lunching. It was like middle of the day. It was like
Yeah.
noon. It was
No,
noon-ish.
we were further than 11 miles because we did 11 miles the first day. Okay, also, really quickly, because we didn't get to say any of the stuff during the episode because we were abruptly interrupted by the fucking Tascam. Way to go,
Yeah.
Tascam.
Well, the batteries.
It was,
Well,
it
yeah,
wasn't
thanks,
Tascam.
It was the
Duracell.
tasking. Yeah.
Thanks, was it Duracell?
No.
What was it? Something
Sam's Club
happened.
batteries.
Anyways, doesn't matter.
Sam's choice.
The trail is not 23 miles.
No.
It's more than 23.
It is. It's got to be closer to
27.
I would say
that's
not
the real
30. It had to have been at least 28 miles.
That's the realization that changed it for us. By the way,
well, and I think we
And it was
recognized
also-
day
it was-
one was difficult
Because it was
why did it seem? Why is it longer than what you planned?
It just
It was wrong, I think.
It just
There's
sections
was.
that just
Elevation
aren't counted, right?
was
the
wrong.
elevation was incorrect in this in each of the spots
But
too.
the plan, which is still sensible if it actually was this, was day one was like 10 or 11, then it was 3 or 4, and then it was like 9.
Day one was supposed to be 8 miles,
so
and it ended up being
a
10
9
or 11.
mile out
Gotcha.
on a Saturday. It's like cool. We'll
with a 3.5
right.
hour drive going back into Jackson Hole.
it just would have made the variables.
but
would have made it difficult.
9 would have worked, and that's where I think we just maybe cut a little bit too close.
I agreed with the fact of not having a really long day and then also being tired coming off the trail,
Yeah.
getting in the car and then having to drive in the dark
Yeah.
through these, it was an hour and a half on these dirt roads with potholes big enough for us to lay in.
Yeah.
In a van.
If we were confident, if we trusted that it was actually going to be 9 miles out, I think we would have stayed at the
Right.
circ.
But
we realized pretty quickly that it's like 12.
wasn't in.
But
it was inaccurate.
so your original question, I'm
big
sorry, what was going through my head just knowing
like,
that we had to do it?
Well, not only that, but like I remember a turning point.
I trust you guys. And I think it was just the fact of like, okay, everyone in the group is very convinced that this is the right move. And I just need to suck that up and accept the fact that this isn't where we're going to be. And hopefully, and I think the other thing that I was in the back of my head is I think someone that we had passed at Big Sandy Lake is awesome too.
We did. We heard that as we were going.
And so that helped.
Yeah.
Because I knew that we were at least going to have a really cool spot to be in as well.
Did you get a good campsite that night?
Yeah, it was decent.
It was a good
okay.
spot. It wasn't the best.
It was an interesting one.
After we saw what else was around, like where we recorded the podcast, there was definitely a spot or two there.
Yeah.
That would have been that would have been the spot.
But I think at that point in time I was just like, well, I'm outvoted. I have to accept the fact that we are gonna move on today, and I'm gonna one step in front of the other, go up, Jackass Pass, going all the way up, and hopefully I start feeling hopefully my stomach starts feeling better. I was able to drink a lot. I was able to eat a little bit. Like hopefully I was, I'm able to kind of fuel my body enough to get up this thing. So
I cannot remember whatever lake. There was one lake before Arrowhead Lake. I don't remember what it was called.
I don't remember either.
Me neither.
We were coming down it.
Yeah.
And there were people at the bottom that were kind of like just dicking around on the rocks.
Yeah, they were laying out.
Yeah.
Yep.
And Greg gave you one of those gummies, those like electrolyte gummies.
Yeah.
The Gatorade chews.
And I remember
the blocks.
That
Yeah,
was
the blocks.
my
It was a
my
cliff.
perspective.
Yeah.
New person.
Yeah.
Dude, it was like someone flipped a switch, like somebody put a quarter in the jukebox.
Yeah.
And like Brian ate some candy and he's like good to go.
What's crazy
was bananas.
What's crazy
I don't
is
know if it was
caffeine.
blood
It was
sugar or something.
caffeine and
or-
sugar.
I totally
It was
forgot
cra-
about that.
Caffeine
was
and
crazy.
sugar.
It was a placebo. Sorry, buddy.
I don't know.
It was nothing.
It could have
Caffeine-
been
sugar
they
pill.
take
could have
caffeine
been blood
and
sugar or something.
No,
I don't know. It was, but
Dude,
I remember
seriously.
very distinctly thinking, like,
Yeah.
dude, Brian, you got to have those little candy bar or
My
like,
stomach
whatever those are.
My stomach turned after that, and those did have caffeine in them, so I think that put a little pep in
it
my step too.
changed everything.
Yeah, I
probably
did. I
helped.
did start
He turned
feeling
into the
better.
Roadrunner, man.
I
It
did
was
start
weird.
feeling better.
Caffeine.
And then also right after that, going into the Arrowhead part of it, where we had the rock
that part was
scrambles, and there
sick.
was a little bit of a rock climbing aspect to it, where it was like we were kind of free soloing some of the stuff. We're not high or anything like that, but there are some. If you don't hit this a certain way, that you could either fall into the lake
a little spill.
or your leg is going in and you're cracking it. So that part of it was really fun to me too. So it made going to Big Sandy to camp for that night a lot easier.
That part of the hike between that whatever that lake was and Arrowhead Lake.
Yeah.
That was a
It was
magnificent
cool.
stretch. And it wasn't Texas Pass. It wasn't the big thing. And so I think to bring it back to kind of the idea, it's like it just goes to show, even through the help of others, what you're able to accomplish.
Sure.
And I think that's you bring a good point, and maybe that's sometimes why I'm not fearful of of challenges because I know that when I'm out with you guys, it's like we got this.
Yeah,
we're going to lift each other up to get through
and
it.
we've all experienced some version of that. So Austin, when you've had your injury and it was kind of like, I'm sure at some level you're like, well, the group's got it. I'm just gonna walk and
right. Like, just live with it. Right?
Because if I was in that situation, I'd be like, I'm not gonna handle all the other bullshit. Like, I'm just gonna try to get where I'm going, and you guys figure everything else out. And when I was at Linville, it was kind of like everyone else is up there. I know where I need to go. I'm just gonna hunker down. We've all had, and then we've had other portions where we're leading and we're sort of like, not decision maker, but maybe we're leading the pack and kind of driving the destiny a little bit more. And other people who might be struggling are like, I'm just following you, man. And it's like we all trade that role pretty seamlessly, depending on how we're all doing in any given
we're
moment.
just throwing the ball around the group. And
this is the moment where I'd love to talk to our buddy Nick, who had a busted ankle at the Whites, and see how he felt.
How did he overcome that? Dude?
Yeah, because that's a challenge. That was badass.
Because we had a lot of trail left.
That was badass.
Yeah, it was early.
Gosh, he really, wow.
I would love to kind of close this out too, and I know that we could probably talk about a lot of different other things. And again, just like the psychology episodes, maybe a part 2 coming up with it's more focused on the mental game of it. But like the preparation going into trips can help immensely with anything that we talked about.
Yeah.
Any of the problems that I've had specifically on physicality or whatever it might be, that can be helped preparing for the trip, going for the hikes, going for the runs, doing the workouts, physically getting your body ready. If it's gonna be hot during the trip, do things while it's hot. Prep in the temperatures you're gonna prep in. If it's gonna be cold, maybe get used to being cold. Maybe do a couple cold plunges. Kind of prep your body. And you can prep your mind for things. Start journaling for some of the stuff. Like really kind of pinpoint what you want to do. What are your intentions for the trip? Like what are you trying to get out of it? I've been doing that for the last few years where before our trip, it's like I want to do and I want to kind of experience and have this kind of thing XYZ. And I want to make sure that I'm able to complete these things mentally for me to get out of to get what I want out of the trip. Right. I want to uncover this about myself. I want to, I would love to have an experience like this. And, I would love to kind of get into this mindset while I'm there. I'd love to disconnect. I'd love to reset. Like prepping mentally for that as you're going into the trip. Right. is
when
valuable.
The challenging moments happen, you ready
have
for them.
Something to go to.
Yeah, you've got some ammo.
And when they don't, and I know, we'll talk more. But when they're not challenging, and that's something I've tried to focus more on too, is like when you are just standing there at the lake and everyone else is doing their thing and you're alone. It's like, what are you doing?
Exactly.
Because you can waste that moment pretty easily.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Where you're just like, meh, I'm here. And it's like, you look back and you're like, oh man.
I had that and I could have really just used that time.
That was a cool moment to like take some time and actually do something with it. Yeah. And like, be more intentional about where you are and what you have around you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I could talk about that.
I was gonna say
we're at the end.
I think we need to have a part 2 where it's like, it's just a bad way to say it, but like trail regrets.
Okay, that'd be a tough one.
Where it's like, have you ever had a moment on the trail where you just like wish you took advantage of more?
Yeah,
I can name a few right off the top of my head right now.
A lot of mine are food related.
Is that right?
A lot of mine are like, man, I really should have taken a shit 3 hours ago.
Yeah. Why didn't I just pee when I woke up and had to pee?
Oh my gosh. For another time, everybody, thank you so much. We really appreciate you guys listening and watching every week. Don't forget to give us a 5-star rating. Leave a comment. If you've got a question, the email is trailtheorypod@gmail.com. Make sure you tell your friends. Let's spread the word, and we will see you next time.
It's gonna be mental.
The Trail Theory Podcast is sponsored by Audimute and Audio Technica. Music by Dan Koch.